Hello, Moonshines. I am sorry for the delay. Um, I'm feeling much better now. I am still slightly fighting off something, but it's not as bad as it was. I feel much better. I'm much uh, better off with my throat not hurting anymore and things like that. So I'm at a point where I can start doing recordings again. Um, so, like I said in the post on my community tab, this um, post or this upload has two things going on for it. The first is going to be an announcement. I have gone and put together a Discord server for any who would be interested in dropping in. It carries the completed chapters that I have for each current story I'm working on and will be updated over time as I finish more. It also holds information for the world built around those stories or built for those stories. So, like Soul of a Wolf, all the information I currently have done for it are sitting in that server. The same with Bound by the Moon, and will be updated over time as I figure out more or I reveal more to you guys. So if you're interested in that, I will be putting the invite link for the Discord server down in the description for this video. And you guys are free to join. You can come by, you can read the stories as they're on the server, you can come and learn more about the worlds of the stories themselves, or just come and chat over the stories, discuss the stories, if that seems like something you guys would be interested in. Now, for the next part of this video, the other thing I stated in my community post is that I would be going over an old story idea. Now, this is one that I am in the middle of overhauling and revamping. It is one that didn't get too far into its writing, mainly because of a lot of distractions popping up at the time, and I kind of put it to the side and then pushed it off the table. So the story is also one of the ones that will be able to have access to it on the server itself. It's a third story that has been added to it. I will be uploading the written chapters before I start into doing any recorded chapters. So if you're interested in reading that as they're added, then it will be there in the server. Sorry, I'm talking a bit too much at once. So, getting into this story that is a bit long pushed aside is called Alter Ego. Now, some of the concepts of it are staying the same. Some of them will be changing greatly. Like recently, I have completely changed the design of the main characters. I have fully finished one of the drawings for the main characters' redesigns. I am in the process of finishing the second one. So the one I have done the redesign for and have completely finished the drawing is Thea, the sister of the pair. So the main characters for this story are Nox and Thea, a set of twin weasels that were hatched from a singular egg. Now, they're not normal weasels in a few different ways. The first way is that they are technically reborn souls of a set of Pokemon that had hatched and lived in the same way that they had. Twins born from one egg, one albinistic, one melanistic. And it shows in their appearances and their mannerisms just how close they are as being twins from one egg. Now, in the past, the initial set of twins had been seen as a blessing. Children were sparse at that time, and having even just one child make it to breaking the shell was few and far between, and the place where they had been born was known for many, many times of drought or severe weather to where even the adults had trouble surviving. Now, for the past of these twins and the old concept, I didn't really have much laid out outside of they were born into an area that they were initially treasured and then betrayed. And doing the revamp so far, that has gotten a lot more depth to it. And some of the first chapters will show the fate of the initial twins, starting from the witch hunt that basically was set out for them. Now, in terms of the old story, I technically have 6 chapters I'd written out. They're not the longest chapters. They are actually fairly short compared to the kind of chapters I do now. And I can add them into the video as part of a thing to show off how the old story was kind of going. And then you can see how it will vary or change to the new variation that's going to be going forward. I'll go ahead and put pictures on the screen right now showing off the initial reference sheets for the twins, or an initial picture I had done of the twins in their old designs. Now, Thea was set to be an albino Buizel, to have high albinism in her fur color and texture, and well, not texture. I don't know why I said texture. But she was meant to be a lot paler, a lot not really colorful, and to be fair, Nox is kind of the same way, just the opposite end of the scale. Now, my initial design for Thea was that she had pure white fur with bright, I think it was bright red eyes, and some kind of neon or hot pink, what's the word I'm looking for? Accents. And that doesn't really fit into an actual description or appearance for an albino animal. Some it does, yes, but it wasn't fitting the picture that I wanted for Thea. So I'll go ahead and I'll put at the end of this little spiel the redesign of Thea so you can see how she's changed. I haven't finished doing the digital version for Nox's new redesign yet, but for Nox, I'll show him now. He was, and well, he is my melanistic Buizel, my darker colored one of the two. And I had him set to a darker gray near black fur, which that part itself is fine, but the odd shade of yellow I picked, or the odd shade of blues I picked to add into it, don't really match up. While I don't have a picture to show how he's changed just yet, he will be more grayscale, so he'll be kind of monotone grayscale. He won't have any colors that don't range from white to black. Well, from light gray to black, depending on how I choose to do the highlights and accents. But I feel like that would fit much better into the image I have of him for how I want him to look. Okay. And so here I'll toss up real quick the initial picture of Thea on her own versus the new design of Thea. So you can see how she was to how she is now. And I'm honestly really happy with the new design. I'm really happy with the way I changed her colors. I think it fits a lot better. She looks a lot more how I would expect or how I was imagining. and that makes me really happy with the design. So I do have pulled up here the character list I had initially written out for the first 6 chapters of Alter Ego. They were kind of going with the characters as I introduced them. So Nox and Thea's were done a bit before the ones that had been shown in the first few chapters, mainly because they did technically do the prologue. They were technically the ones in the prologue speaking, which you'll hear that after I finish going through some of this stuff. I will read the chapters for the very end of this video, because I think it would be fun to show the difference from how it was to how I'm changing it now. So, how I have them, the way I did the typings and stuff, I always like to throw in typings that aren't initially part of the typing for the Pokemon, mainly because I feel like, one, it's something that kind of throws a twist in it, and 2, part of it comes from the way that their characters were initially developed, because, like I said, for Nox and Thea, they are reborn souls. They were once living as a different set of twins that were in somewhat of the same situation they are now. So they carry traits over from that past life. Now, some of these traits will be changing. Well, a lot of these traits will be changing. So, bleh. Sorry. Also, I'm not cutting anything from me messing up, mainly because I feel like since I'm going full into things that have been scrapped or are being changed, sitting here and editing it to where the mess ups and stuff are gone isn't as fun. It's not a perfect reading. It's not meant to be a perfect portrayal of a story piece like how I do with the Scarlet River or Path of Destiny. And I think it's a bit fun to show the mess ups sometimes, or just how tongue-tied I can get. But for this list, it starts off with Nox. So, name Nox, N-O-X. Gender is, of course, male. Now, their age at the time in the story in which they are starting to get known, starting to actually be focused on for the story, they're about 6 years old. Both the twins are. Of course, for the story, their species is Weasel, or at least for the part of the story that you're getting to know them. I didn't really get into the part that would show you their past, but as the new way it's going to go, it's going to start by showing a bit of the past before delving into what they are now. The type, I had Nox set to water dark because of his melanistic traits, but also because of the... So, initially I wanted the past lives of the twins to be an Espeon and an Umbreon, mainly because I'm a bit biased towards evolutions, and it seemed like the easiest route to take for siblings. But I did think for the rework, it would be kind of fun to go with a different species. I'm still figuring that one out. So don't hold me to revealing information that I don't even know yet. But Nox was going to be water dark, and Thea was going to be water psychic. You've already seen them, so their appearance doesn't really matter too much. And then into the personality for Nox. Nox was set to be a usually quiet kind of character. His personality reads as this. Now, please keep in mind that these characters are at least 4 years old from the initial creation, if not older, while the chapters for them might be a bit more recent. the initial designs and ideas are a bit older than the chapters had been. So Nox's personality reads, is usually quiet and only responds if directly prompted. Is very chatty with his mom and sister, but usually speaks through his telepathic link to his sister in front of others or even when alone when he doesn't feel like using his voice. Now that telepathic link is related to them being reincarnated. I won't get too much into that because that's going to be a key element in the story even now. Protective of his sister and mother and can be standoffish if someone tries to overstep in regards to them. Prefers open and bright areas where he can distract his sister from her worries and see her smile. Nox was initially meant to be the quiet, caring, stereotype kind of character, like the quiet twin who takes care of all the troubles of the one that isn't quiet. But I'm not the fondest of that personality for him anymore. The way I see him now is, yes, he's still quiet. He's not the loudest. He's not the most look at me kind of person. He will stand in a corner and figure out 57 different ways to bury you 12 feet under where no one would find you. Should you do anything wrong to his family, to the friends that he has chosen as part of his family after meeting them, he is the kind of quiet character that you don't want to mess with. Moving on to how Thea initially was. So, for Thea, she had a quite a bit different personality than from how I've chosen to portray her now. Thea's personality, how I had it written, reads as this. Shows as calm and soothing on the surface in front of her mother and others, but in front of her brother she's in shambles. Anxiety eats at her that others may find out their secret and turn on them. Suffers from nightmares and panic attacks, and prefers quiet spaces rather than crowded ones. Very dependent on her brother as an anchor for her emotions because she can't confide in anyone else. Now, the reasoning for her personality being like this was because their mother told them early on about the secret of their birth, how they could not tell anybody that they were born from one egg. Now, this interaction holds true still for the new story rewrite. It holds true for the way it's supposed to be, but not anymore is she the anxious, overly despondent character that I had her portrayed as initially. She is now the kind of character that has a fiery personality, that she acts before she thinks in most regards. If she decides it, she walks up on a situation, say, you're trying to ask someone for directions to somewhere because you're new to the city that you're visiting, or you just don't know the area well, or you have trouble with directions. And the other person doesn't do well with social interactions. So they seem to be the ones in a terrible spot, even though you're the one asking for help. She could see that and decide, you're bullying this person. You are doing something that is outright wrong, and she will confront you, fight you, make you stop without knowing the whole context of the situation. She kind of causes a lot of misunderstandings because of it, and she does apologize afterwards. She does have the tendency to apologize, own up to her mistakes, and say, okay, I got it wrong. It does not stop her from repeating the process. Now, these next few characters, there's only a handful of them, so there's not much to go off of. I didn't really get into too much information about them other than deciding what their initial relationship was with the twins. So, there was the male float soul named Lapis. That was Nox and Thea's sire. He was their father. He had a bit of a personality description to him. His was that He is quick-tempered and extremely manipulative. Truly does love Aurora, but in a twisted way, so her leaving hurts him deeply, but also makes it to where he can't understand why, and never sees himself as the problem. He was the kind of person that couldn't take accountability for anything, and felt that him being interested in his wife and his mate made it to where he basically owned her. That she had no life outside of him, that she couldn't have a life outside of him, that anything that had no regards to him was betrayal. He was so twisted in his thinking that he didn't realize that he was the reason she left. It all ended up being her fault. She left because she did something wrong. There was something wrong with her. He would not hold accountability to himself for what he caused. On to Aurora. Aurora was Nox and Thea's mother. She was the one who, during the time of her pregnancy with the egg, or I think it was just before the egg was born or just after the egg was born, she ran. She left this abusive, manipulative situation in an attempt for a better life for what she thought would be one child, for the life inside this egg. And she could not bear to put them into a situation that, one, would most likely result in them being treated the way that she was, and two, she had this feeling deep, deep down that there was going to be something different about this egg, that there was going to be something different about this child, and they could not be in this situation, in this environment, where so many others could see. Now, for her, I did have a unique appearance for her. She had the normal coloration of a floatzel except for her eyes. Her eyes were a brilliant green. They were like a bright emerald or a glowing jade green. That's the image I had of her eyes in my mind. And she was slightly on the smaller side when it came to floatzels. Now, for her personality, this is where I had her personality described, or this is how I had it described. Originally very strong-willed before her pairing. Now, see how it says pairing and not marriage? She did not choose to be with Lapis. She was forced to. Was not afraid to make her opinion known. After her pairing, she became meek and terrified. Even shadows scared her. It took all the courage she had left to make the decision to escape when she did. After being isolated for a while, she started to value herself a bit more every day, and when she and the twins finally moved to a port town, she gains back the vigor and spirit she lost years ago. So, Lapis and Aurora's situation was one of textbook abuse, or what you feel like you should be able to see the signs of. But in the situation of where Aurora grew up, the area in which they lived, it was, you could describe it as more of like a cultish area when it came to them. And it really was not the best situation for her. So it took a lot for her to leave. Her being as outspoken and stuff as she was always frowned upon. And they took it upon themselves to force her to be paired with Lapis to basically try to get her under control was part of it, because she had all intents to leave before they forced her into the pairing. Now, a bit more information on the twins. This part will hold true even in the rework of the story. Nox and Thea cannot evolve. So, they will never be able to become Floatzel. Even when they lived in their past lives, they were not able to evolve. The nutrition in one egg is not feasible to sustain two young Pokemon in a healthy manner. So while, yes, they did manage to make it to term and break their shell, they do technically have issues health-wise. After their first failed evolution, they started to carry around Everstones to prevent it from happening again, because the event was so painful. They felt such searing, aching pain from their bodies trying to evolve and adjust to the growth that it scarred them, both physically and mentally. Now, I don't know where I'm going to put the scars just yet. I don't know if I'm going to make the scars a specific shape, but they will have them later on into the story. Now, I've pretty much gone through the majority of the old world stuff I had set up outside of the actual chapters themselves. So I will go ahead and get into those now so you can see how the initial story was being foretold. Well, not foretold. I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Let's get into reading. They say we're an omen, but I don't feel we are. They say we will bring misfortune, but everyone around us says how much luck we bring. Only 3 of us know the truth. Our mother and the 2 of us, twins, born from the same egg. Legend tells of a time when a pair of twins hatched from the same egg. The birth of these 2 was at first seen as a blessing, but as time passed and the 2 grew, misfortune struck everywhere they went, until eventually it was decided they must be eliminated. Such an existence came to be, seen as something to be feared. Parents always dreaded the small chance that their egg would hatch and bear 2 children rather than 1. But countless years went by without a second occurrence. Twins born from 2 eggs are considered a sign of prosperity. Twins born from the same egg are deemed as beings of calamity. The legend that no one remembers how it happened, why it happened, or the reason for why the twins were sacrificed for the sake of the world. My sister and I came about from 1 egg. My brother and I are twins who grew in the same shell. Our mother hid us. The forest shielded us. And when we had grown up a bit, we were introduced to the world. But they don't know what the 3 of us do. They think we are twins from 2 eggs. If they found out we hatched from only 1 egg, they would fear us and wish death upon us. To repay our mother's To repay our mother's efforts, we must survive. To repay her love, we will survive. We will prove that we are not what the legend makes us out to be. We will show the world that the legend was wrong. For Nox. For Thea. My alter ego. So, as the prologue shows here, they know the legend. They also know how they will be treated should others find out. It was not the best situation for them, but they were making do with what they could. In the center of a bustling town, a Pokemon covered in a hooded robe makes his way towards the fountain in the center of the bustling area and starts to call out to the passing children, full of curiosity. The robe covers his whole body, and the hood is so deep you only see shadows when you look inside. No one could make out whether he was a biped or a quadruped, whether he was a bird or a canine. All they knew was his medium-sized height, Drawn in by the mystery, Minnie stopped to listen to what he was saying. "Hello, children, all draw near, while I tell a tale to fear. Many countless moons ago, twins from the same egg did show. Joy and happiness was spread, none knew it would change to dread. Storm and madness came about, Pokemon chose to be without. They said the evil twins must go, only Arceus did know. The twins were not the cause of fears, sent to the beyond full of tears, with their last wish that the world grow calm, and one final apology to their mom." This caught the attention of all who heard. It was an old legend many knew from childhood, but there was more added on. They had not been told. More stopped to listen to the bard's melodic words. A second coming made its way, twins again put in the fray, forced to hide from prying eyes, struggling to keep their lives. Only 3 knew the truth, till an outsider showed proof. Young twins forced to run for a freedom that was hard won, strived to prove the legend wrong. So listen now, after my song. These 2 did not bring calamity. They brought about prosperity, proved in front of everyone that their lives were not an unnecessary one. Many passerby had now stopped, rapt with attention to the words from this mysterious Pokemon. The words held promise of a tale to be told that would make these statements clear. So many gathered and waited for the bard to continue. Legend of old has been proved wrong, one many knew for so long. Oldest memories have passed, not even the reasoning did last. As to how the legend was made, or why the true story did fade, now the old meets the new. Truth became clear from those 2. Follow now into my tale, but please hold your wail, for this tale can be quite sad, but by the end you will all be glad. Listen now to their story, so you may all set aside your worry. Now, this character, I'll go ahead and put him on screen real quick, was a personal design I made as well. He is a hybrid between a Buniri and a Dragonair. And he was also reincarnated. Now, this character I don't intend to use anymore, so I'll also go ahead and show you real quick his sister Zara, who is a mix between a Finnegan and a shiny Roselia. These 2 were characters that initially would play a decent part in the story that they aren't going to be playing anymore because that part's been scrapped and changed out for something else. But these 2 are designs that I had a lot of fun making, and I just kind of want to show them off. Running through the dark night, a female floatzel is making her way away from a place that has trapped her since she was an egg. She had finally worked up the courage to escape from this village filled with horror, at least for her. She was tired of the constant mental and emotional manipulation of her mate and family. She had a set destination in mind for where she was going, a forest that was said to curse any who set foot inside. While she didn't really believe that myth, the rest of her village surely did, and none would enter after her. The journey was a tiresome one for an expecting female, but for her sake and the sake of her unborn children, she had to make it there. The journey would take 4 or 5 days at this pace. She had to make sure she had a good head start before they realized she was gone, before they started to pursue. That village was a well-hidden one where inbreeding was quite common. Even if you were against a pairing your parents chose, there was not much you could do. Females held no standing other than to deliver eggs and keep the nest warm. She had only been paired with her mate for less than 2 years. He was her cousin from her father's side. At first, he seemed like a nice floatzel, but after about 3 months, things took a sharp turn, and he started his mind games. He would tear down her self-esteem and destroy her self-worth. She would rather he had hit her, because at least she could recover from the physical wounds. After it became clear she was carrying his child, he became even more sharp with his words. If she tried to hide to get away from him, he would say she would... Bleh. If she tried to hide to get away from the things he said, he would say even worse things. Finally, a month ago, she had decided this had to end. The egg was due to come in 2 weeks now, and she couldn't let her children go through what she had gone through. They had to grow up in a stable and safe environment. They had to know they had some worth past what the village taught. She decided to move as soon as the sun started setting, and continue on until just before the sun rose. The others weren't fond of darkness. They would find a place to rest and would probably expect her to do the same. But that wouldn't be the case. This game of cat and mouse continued for days, until on the 4th day, she had made it. She had made it to the cursed forest. Looking at the towering trees that seemed to darken everything inside them, she took a deep breath and continued past. She had escaped, and she would make sure it stayed that way. The pursuing Floatzel and Buizel stopped dead in their tracks when they followed her scent to the entrance to the cursed forest. Exchanging wary and nervous glances, they tried to make a decision. Should they follow her inside, or give her up as a lost cause? She was with child, and they had reason to believe the child would be a very special one, but they knew the story surrounding this forest, and dared not venture inside. After much discussion, they came to the consensus that she was to be pronounced dead, that she had entered the cursed forest and had no chance of making it out alive. With the decision made, the group began their trek home with mixed feelings on the outcome. The now escaped Floatzel went deep into the forest, trying to find a good location for a nest. She couldn't understand why they thought the forest was cursed. The air about it past the entrance was so clear, calming, and seemed blessed instead. She wouldn't argue the reasoning too much, though. After all, it was what let her escape with her child. She felt there was something very different about the egg she was carrying, that the child that hatched from it was going to be a very special one. With anticipation and excitement in her heart, she settles into the forest, into her new home. You let her get away? A bucket flew past the head of one of the returning Buizel. The one kicking up a fuss was the escaped female's mate. I told you to bring her back with my child. Well, Chief Lapis, we tried, but as we almost had her, she went in the cursed forest. She's as good as dead now. Lapis started to pace back and forth in agitation. He had never expected her to be capable of running away. He had made sure to beat down any of her self-worth and hopes from the day they were paired. Where did things go wrong? Now she was gone with his unborn child, his heir. Everyone expected them to conceive the strongest male in the village in generations. And now, that was all gone. Why are you all so useless? Lapis roared at the group that had failed to recapture one stupid, worthless female. What pride should you have now as males in this village after letting that female escape? You will all be given punishment tomorrow. Go to bed. Now. The shamed males make their way back to their own nests, dreading the coming sunrise. After they had filed out of his cave at the head of the village, Lapis started destroying everything he could get his paws on in a blind rage. Useless. Useless! If I ever see her again, I'll kill her with my own claws. Running away from me? She should have just been obedient, like a good servant, like the other females here. You've sealed your fate now, Aurora. Aurora had found a nice nesting spot in the center of the forest. There was an adequately deep hollow in the side of a hill, and she made use of it. Gathering moss and other soft bedding material, she made a nice, large nest that could accommodate her and her soon-to-be-born child. Even though it's only been a few days since she arrived, she already very much loved this forest. It was very serene, and much to her surprise, no other Pokemon lived here. None even ventured inside for the boundless fruit and berries and other such things. She felt like it was her own hidden treasure trove. She spent the first 2 days after arriving exploring the forest from top to bottom. There was a cool lake not far of a walk from her hollow, and there was a good rock for sunning during midday. The more she found, the more she fell in love with the forest. She didn't want to have to be scared. I just read that completely wrong. She didn't have to be scared of being beaten down by emotional manipulation here, and she had slowly started to gain back a little self-worth after realizing she was fully capable of being independent. She didn't need Lapis. She didn't need the village. She was able to take care of herself, and she would be able to take care of her child. She did find a few things odd around the forest that she couldn't quite figure out. There was an old cave that seemed used at some point, with all kinds of markings and drawings. If she looked closely, the drawings seemed to tell a story. But what that story was, she didn't know. There was the eggshell that seemed to have fossilized over time in the cave. Part of the shell, if put together, bore a strange mark. She visited this cave often, trying to decipher the tale the drawings told, and wanting to figure out the mystery. As time passed and her due date drew closer, she finally started to understand and put the pieces together. The drawing started off with a female Pokemon and an egg. The egg bore the same mark as the shell inside the cave. Next, it showed that the egg had hatched, the shells scattered on the floor like the pieces had been when she first got here. From the egg, not one, but 2 children were born. One looked white as snow with red eyes. The other was dark as night, with eyes like the night sky. Twins, hatched from one egg, not 2. Aurora realized that this told the story of Pokemon from an old legend that everyone had heard from their parents. The story of the Twins of Calamity. That was what the legend was called now. No one remembers the name that it had before, or really anything about the legend past what was passed down through the generations. Focusing back on the drawing, Aurora continued to follow the story. After the twins were born, all of their family, and the village they lived in, here in this fairy forest, rejoiced. Twins were always seen as an omen of good fortune, and no one had ever heard of having twins from one egg. That meant that the fortune they'd bring would be much more than twins from 2 eggs. The Pokemon revered the twins, and often catered to and spoiled them, even more so than the other children in the village. The twins, though, did not grow up pampered and selfish. They were actually quite selfless, and always doing tasks around the village, small or large. They loved making others smile. The other village children had come to resent the twins in a way. They got so much attention from all the adults, and in their eyes, the twins had stolen their parents from them. Oftentimes, the other children would use the twins' selflessness against them, sending them on seemingly impossible tasks, hoping they never came back. Yet, the twins always managed to complete the tasks, and even battered and bruised, they showed such bright smiles when they reported the task was done, and delivered whatever the other children had requested. The adults noticed this and wanted to scold their children, but any time they tried, the twins always talked them out of it. Aurora was enraptured by the story the drawings told. There was so much more written here that no one knew about the twins from the legend. She also now understood why this forest was regarded as cursed, even if no one else remembered why. The Twins of Calamity were born and raised here. Continuing where she lost focus, the next drawings depicted a Pokemon in a robe entering the village. The Pokemon seemed to be well received and was welcomed warmly. After seeing the twins, though, the travelers seemed to hold a lot of enmity towards them, even though they had just met. The travelers started to spread tales of how the Twins of Calamity walked the earth, that in a few years misfortune would fall to all they encountered. and they would destroy everything and anything. With the travelers' tales, the villagers who once showed much care and love for the twins turned on them, one by one, until only their mother stood on their side anymore. The villagers lashed out at the trio, saying to put an end to the disasters before they happened. The village argued with the twins' mother until one lunged for the twins. Talking was getting them nowhere, so they decided to act. The mother fought off the individual who made the first move and quickly took her children and ran. The villagers pursued, but once night fell, they couldn't follow as easily. As night settled in, the mother told her children to run. Run and never look back. If they loved her, they had to survive. They must survive. After much hesitation, the twins left and did as their mother said, vowing that they would repay their mother's love by obeying her request. The drawing stopped with the twins' departure, but there was one drawing that seemed to hint at another location on a map. Shaking her head, Aurora took one more look at the eggshells before heading back to her hollow to rest for the night. Aurora didn't venture around much the last few days before her children were born. She spent most of her time processing the drawings in the cave and the meaning behind them. Someone had drawn... I just lost my spot. There it is. Someone had drawn those pictures well after the fact of the village being here. It had to have been after the twins' deaths, if she had to guess. Someone wanted to chronicle the truth. Does that mean the location drawn out on a map has the next part of the story? While thinking of such things before she knew it, the day had come that she went into labor. As she was all alone, she had no one to help her through it. Nothing to help but her own willpower. After some painful hours had passed, Aurora laid curled up with her egg. Exhausted as she was, she examined her egg from top to bottom, and her eyes made out a familiar mark. The same mark that had been on the egg back in the cave where she read the story. The same mark as the egg of the twins of Calamity. After coming to know some of the story of those twins from so long ago, Aurora felt that there was no way this forest was cursed. If that mark meant what she thought it did, then she would have 2 bundles of joy with her soon. To her, this fact could only ever be a blessing, and in her heart, this forest became known as the Forest of Blessings. It had blessed her with so many things since she arrived, and now she got to know about something no one else seemed able to remember. Indeed, her children would be special, and maybe, one day, just like this forest had proved its name wrong, they too would prove the legend of ones like them from the past was wrong as well. A moon cycle passed before the egg was due to hatch. Aurora spent most of her days warming her egg. Other than her occasional ventures out to collect food, she did not leave her warm little camp much. After much contemplation, Aurora made the decision to move her nest into the cave that had the drawings and the old eggshells. Her egg bore the same symbol, and these things could have a high chance of helping them understand the old prejudiced legend of old. After having set up inside the cave with all her rations, bedding, and anything else she could think of that she would need for this time, Aurora believed herself to be ready for her egg to hatch. After 3 more uneventful days passing, Aurora awoke to the sound of cracking. Jolting up from her slumber, she glanced toward her egg to see cracks forming along the shell from 2 separate points, showing that the children inside were attempting to make their way out into the outside world from their protective shell. Excited to see her children emerge, Aurora sat with rapt attention until finally 2 paws made their way through the holes in the shell they had made. 1 white, 1 black. Soon after, the rest of the shell was broken, and 2 tiny forms emerged. The first thought to pass through Aurora's head when she saw her little ones was that together they made up her night and day. Thus, when picking up her small ones to bring them closer to nurse, the black-furred male was given the name Nox, and the white-furred female was named Thea. Her night and her day. Thea was fairly smaller than her brother, but made much more noise in her small cries, while Nox himself was fairly quiet. This gave them even more reasoning behind her naming. Oh, fuck. I messed up. This gave even more reasoning behind her naming. As she naming them as she did, and as she watched them nestle in, looking for milk, she felt nothing but strong love for these two. She knew the legends of the Twin of Calamity was exaggerated by the hooded figure in the paintings. Whatever happened in the time of the first twins, Aurora did not know past the drawing she saw, but she did know that she would teach her twins the truth. She had found out about the legend, and if they chose, when they got older, to find out the rest of the story by following the map at the end of the cave, she would go with them. After the twins had hatched, the days blurred together, with Aurora nursing the two, eating food for herself and sleeping. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Before she knew it, Nox and Thea were running about the forest on their own paws, making noise and playing with each other, doing what young children do best. Aurora spent most of her days now following them around the forest and making sure they were safe and sound, keeping them from venturing outside the borders. Following these peaceful times, 6 years passed quietly in the forest for this family of 3, before Aurora made the decision to bring the twins outside the forest so they could understand the world. She wasn't ready just yet, though. She needed to make sure all possible grounds were covered and protecting their secret. It could not be known that they were from one egg, lest they were rallied against and persecuted for something they could not control. Her children were not bringers of calamity. She would show they were spreaders of prosperity. All the goodness in the world would have to be on their side for them to live out their lives safely, but Aurora was willing to take her chances. She did not want to hide the two away forever, only to be resented for them not being able to venture outside. She wanted them to be able to live freely, and well as proof that the legend was wrong. Aurora began to travel to the lakeside town east of the forest and made arrangements for the family of 3 to move in. She told the elder that she and her 2 twins were looking to move into the peaceful town as they had lived an isolated and somewhat nomadic life, but that they felt it was time to settle down among others and acclimate to the environment of being around Pokemon again. The elder took to her story and helped her secure a home at the edge of the north side of town for them to move into. Aurora told him that it would be a few days before they officially moved in, as she had to explain the decision to the children, but that they would be joining the population very soon. So, there's technically 2 more chapters for me to read, but this is getting a bit long, and I may leave them as part of the next thing I do with this, because the next scrapped story I intend to read, off what little bit I have left of it, was one I never really got much into. So it's one that could probably use some packaging around it to make it not like a 5-minute video. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it here for these ones. I will read chapter 5 and chapter 6 for these next time. I will put it up on Tuesday next week, like this one's going up. So you can expect the scrap story stuff to go up on Tuesdays for the time being until I'm done with them. Thank you guys if you stayed this long. I am so sorry it ended up this long. I was not expecting it to. Normal uploads do resume tomorrow, so I hope you're looking forward to Scarlet River and Path of Destiny on Thursday. But I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.